Okay, here's a new episode. No, this is not deja vu, and we're not going back in episodes here. This is actually the next episode. And just kind of chasing a few things, buttoning up a few things. So, as you can see here, we have the transmission out, transfer case. And I have the whole front suspension and differential out. So, if you've been following, I've been having a few issues. So we ended up having a leak that I believed was from the rear main seal here, which, as you can see here, let me see if I can get some light in here. It does not appear that it is leaking from the rear main. I can't find any residue. I did have some residue from this little tiny corner here. I don't know if I could zoom in there. Where the oil pan, the rear cover, and the block kind of meet. Right here, I don't see any sealant that oozed out. So I don't know if it blew out or if I just didn't get it good enough the last time I did the oil pan. Oh, sorry. But, anyways, so it looks like I'm going to have to drop the pan again, but I was kind of planning on that anyways. I have all new seals for there's two O-rings over here. I think one of them might be bad because I'll kind of go to the top and kind of explain some other issues on why this thing is dismantled as much as it is. So we're going to go ahead and drop the oil pan. I've got new O-rings for these. There's two O-rings here, and then there's an O-ring up by the oil pump. The last time I redid the seal, I did not replace those. I reused them. They didn't have that many miles on it. I thought I'd be alright, but now I want to go ahead and put some new ones in there. As for the front diff, I need to remove that to get the oil pan off. And I have the new housing. I think I showed that in the last video. So I figured might as well pull it out and get it. You know, it has to come out, so I'm kind of doing a bunch of things at the same time while I kind of have this dismantled. Another thing that I'm going to do is there is I believe the LSs are the same way. There is what they call it, the barbell. It's like right in here. It's basically a piece of plastic with an O-ring on it. And when they mill the block and they drill that oil passage, it just kind of seals that and directs the oil down. Oh, I'm sorry. It directs the oil down and that to go through the filter, and then it comes back up on the other side of that barbell to kind of lubricate the rest of the engine. That's kind of the pathway that it does. The factory one's just a piece of plastic with one O-ring. I found I guess you could say an upgraded one that is billet aluminum instead of the plastic, and it actually has an O-ring on both sides. One of the kind of things that people don't like about the factory design is that the O-ring is only on the back side, so when oil is coming this way and it's directed down into the filter, there's no O-ring there, so there's some oil that actually bypasses the filter to circulate through the rest, so you're kind of getting a little bit of oil that's not filtered. And this dual O-ring kind of barbell design, I'll try to show that in maybe the next video, because I'm planning on probably doing another video as I'm kind of progressing this kind of large repairs / button-up items, but that's where we're at right now. I do have a little bit of seepage back here that appears to be coming from the head gasket. It looks like oil residue. It doesn't look like it's leaking oil. It just looks like some seepage. I got it on that side as well. I'm not really sure if that's from kind of my pressure issues and maybe it pushed out. I don't have any oil in the coolant. I'm not losing coolant. It doesn't look like I'm having a mix of coolant and oil to indicate that I have some massive head gasket issues, so I'm kind of playing it by ear on what I'm going to do about that. Do I go ahead and rip the heads off and, investigate that, potentially having to do anything from hopefully just replacing a head gasket to possibly having to get things leveled back out involving some machining. If I get to that point, I may potentially just see if I could source another maybe block and heads, but I gotta kind of run some things through my head, because those that I don't know if I had covered it before, but I had some oil pressure issues, so there may be potential that once I drop this oil in the oil filter or the oil pan, there may be some potential oil starvation damage I may find. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed on that. So it's kind of like, do I just leave the seepage alone, correct what it is, and then drive it and kind of see how it goes, and then potentially maybe just buy another block and heads for the future, and then not even worry about the head gaskets at the moment. I'm still kind of contemplating how I'm going to proceed and play that by ear. I'm hoping it's just seepage, though, from, it's sitting around or maybe a little bit pushed out with some of my pressure issues. So speaking of the pressure issues, let's go back up top. I've been crawling up and down for the last 2 days, but all right, so we have the top taken apart some, so I have to take it down to this to get the back bolts for the transmission from the top. So all this has to come out for that. That's what's making me contemplate, do I go ahead and do the head gaskets now? Hope that it's just the gasket, because I'm already partially there. I mean, it won't take much more to pull the heads. I already have the valve covers, only have about 2 bolts in them right now. So one of the things that me and the tuner were worried about is that I may have had a potentially, I may have potentially had a collapsed lifter. So before I even did any of this, I had taken off the valve covers and cycled the engine to see if I had oil shooting out, which would indicate that lifter is collapsed or broken or not operating properly. So I ran a test doing that to kind of see if that may have caused my previous oil pressure issue. So I went ahead and took them both off, cycled the engine multiple times, even ran it on 4 cylinders for a little bit. I have no oil coming up to the heads. I've probably driven it a couple times like that. Not extremely long distance or anything, maybe like a 15-minute drive here and there. Maybe a week or 2, but then again, I don't know how long this pressure issue has been occurring, because when I don't get the oil coming up to the top of the heads, I still have oil pressure. I'm reading 30, 40 PSI, indicating that the sensor, which is right there, is reading a pressure reading. So one of the concerns that I have is that the pickup is integrated into the oil pan, and then the seal in the front for the oil pump, if I blew that out, it may be pulling air in, and maybe I'm just reading air. There may be a pressure buildup there, but it's air and not oil. So that's kind of looking like why I may be getting a pressure reading, but not getting oil cycling to the top of the engine. So I'm kind of hoping that only happened within the last week or 2 that I had driven this thing, and that there's no kind of other damage. But we'll find out once I drop. I haven't pulled the oil yet to see if I have any flakes or anything in there. I do have a magnetic drain plug, so I'll be able to see if there's some metal that has accumulated in there. But I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping that I can fix these O-rings, get the pressure corrected, and, you know, I'm not going to drive this thing until I actually see oil pulling up to the top of the heads again. So I'll be doing whatever it takes until I get to that point before I put this thing back together and actually drive it again. One of the things is I'm redesigning the PCV system. So currently I had the valve covers connected across. They were teed into the intake. And then I had the standard, you know, there's the PCV valve. It went up. I originally had it into a catch can. I had bypassed that for a little bit, thinking my catch can was causing some problems, and goes from the valley cover PCV into the intake manifold. A kind of hypothesis I have, just in my understanding of PCV systems, is that when the air comes into the in, which should come that way, I'm thinking I'm getting it going both ways and potentially pushing too much pressure in to both sides. And then when it's pushing a lot more pressure to come up here, because I actually get a lot of sweating on this line of oil residue. It's actually sweating through the hose, and I get quite a bit of oil residue that comes out of the PCV and goes into the intake. So when I pulled the intake manifold, it has got quite a bit of oil in it. There's quite a bit of oil on the valves, you know, more than I would like to see, especially since I was running a catch can for quite a while. I think I've only been running no catch can for maybe 2 weeks, so there's a significant amount for just 2 weeks. So what I've done is I've done a little bit of research, and I found out that GM actually, I don't know if they've had issues, but I've seen some other threads about guys that have pushed out rear main seals due to some pressure issues. And I noticed in 2019, this is a 2018 engine, 2019 GM actually changed the entire PCV system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resort to the 2019 routing, which makes a lot more sense to me as far as getting a full circle of air circulation for the PCV. So essentially what we're going to do is this will now just be a line from the intake to the passenger side valve cover. And so that should be the in air that goes down into the crank. And then it will come back up. This will get capped. I will have a plug on there. I haven't found a plug that screws in yet. If anyone knows a plug where I can screw that in there and seal that up to not utilize this PCV at all, that'd be nice. I'd rather not have to replace the whole valley cover for no reason. But basically the PCV will be plugged here. And then I have a 2019 driver's side valve cover, which fits. All the holes are the same. The only difference is this outlet is actually the PCV. So the PCV will be here, and then this line will route into the intake manifold. And the way I'm going to route it is this line will go into the catch can, and then the catch can will go into the intake manifold. So then we'll have a nice circle of air coming in this way, going down to vent the crankcase, come back up through the PCV into the catch can to separate the oil, and then into the intake manifold. So it's like a nice continuous one path circle. I think with this double path is what was kind of causing my issue and putting too much air down in there to push the oil up. So I'm hoping that kind of alleviates some of this issue, and maybe why I'm getting that seepage back there. And so maybe that once I correct that, the seepage will stop and I don't have to worry about the head gaskets. But we'll see. A little bit more investigation to do. I've got a small parts list already, a couple gaskets for the transfer case to transmission, and I'm going to buy a new dipstick. I've pulled this dipstick about 5 or 6 times and I have never replaced it. And I actually need to double check that is the correct one for my oil pan. So I'm going to double check the part numbers that Moroso has for that oil pan and just make sure I have the correct dipstick. Other than that, that's kind of where we stand at the moment. It's kind of one of those things, you know, that's all the little fine tweaks you've got to do, and sometimes they involve quite a bit of teardown to get into them. But I'm hoping that once we kind of figure out this oil issue and oil cycling back up to the heads, once we reroute this PCV to the different kind of circulation, get our new barbell in there, get the rear. I'm still going to replace the rear main, even though it looks fine. I have a brand new one. I might as well put it in while I have it torn apart like this, because it's not fun to pull the transmission. But this is where we stand at the moment, and I'm hoping that in the next week or two we're all done, back on the road, and hopefully continuing to tidy up tuning. Tuning was actually going pretty well. We were pretty much dialed on fuel and was just doing a couple verification logs when we kind of discovered this oil pressure issue, and we're about to move into the next step. So I'm hoping with rerouting the PCV like I want it, it's not going to affect the MAF fueling, because I'm not originally we were talking about potentially having to redo the intake to allow a line to go from this head or this valve cover to the intake, this valve cover to the intake, like the factory Silverado. And then yeah, so I'm hoping to not have to do that, and then we'll go ahead and get this thing tidied up. I'll see you guys on the next one.